It's so funny that when we start these podcasts, there's always that moment like leading up when we're discussing what we're going to talk about. We're very serious and like thinking through things. And then it's like we hit record and we're both like, okay, now time to smile. So what we want to talk about in this episode is that over the summer, we competed in the OSV Innovation Challenge, going for a $100,000 grant for Strong Catholic Dad. And through that process, we had a lot of business coaching where they focused on, have you found a need in the market? And are you doing something that adequately addresses that need? And so we know, do dads need to step up to the plate? Absolutely. Is what we're doing through the podcast, through the See For Yourself guide, something that can help dads? Yes. But the problem that we ran into is that our coaches, other competitors were telling us, dads are one of the hardest markets to reach. And something that you've said that I would love for you to expound on is that the reason that dads are the hardest, or one of the hardest markets to reach, is because dads all think that they're doing fine. And at the point that they realize that maybe they could have been doing things better, it's almost too late. So can you expound on that a little bit? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So let me go back to statistics. What we're facing, first of all, is that 85% of young Catholic adults, by the time they graduate from college, are rejecting the faith. So we've got a massive hemorrhage of kids they're young adults who are saying, I'm done. What's more shocking is that studies have been done by the Georgetown Cara Institute as to like what age did they actually decide to leave the faith. And statistically, the average age is 13. So and a quarter of them make that decision by the age of 10. So this is happening well before college. And I've even thought, oh my gosh, and it's important to go to send your child to a college where they're going to be supported in their faith. Yet the problem really happened much earlier. And this is really the big challenge, especially for us dads, because when we were in that OSV challenge, you're always looking from a business standpoint, from a ministry standpoint, you're trying to serve a need that people feel that they have. And so in some ways, it's kind of easy to feed the hungry because people are hungry. And somebody who's spiritually hungry, where they're just like, I want to know truth. In some ways, it's easy because they're coming to you and they're saying, tell me the truth. When it comes to parenting and the influence that we have on our children, the need that we have, it's like it's covered up and we don't feel it when our kids are young. When they're older, when they're 15, 20, and we start to see the problems that are arising. And at that point, a lot of people are like, gosh, I need to be doing something. It's like, well, hold on. We needed to be doing something 15 years ago. And it's not just dads in general. It's like, it's me. Like the same thing, happened to me, is that I was thinking that I was doing fine. And there were a lot of things that I was doing right. There were a lot of good things. And there were a lot of things that I was doing wrong, but the impact wasn't there. So I didn't see the negative consequences right away. And actually, it took years for some of those negative consequences to be clear, at least to me. Some of those my wife was seeing, and she was encouraging me, like, Michael, spend more time putting the kids down, spend more time just when one of the children come with a little picture that they want to show you, stop what you're doing, pay attention, and don't just do it like a robot. I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice, and move on, because the kids totally, they read right through and they know what you really think about that by the attention that you put to it, by how you look in their eyes. So the challenge is this, is that even as we're going through talking to these business people, they said, well, as soon as you hit on the need, everything will flow. So you must not have hit on the need yet. Yet some of the deeper thinkers said, no, we get it. We know that the need is there. You have the hardest nut to crack because you're trying to solve for a need that dads don't feel like they have yet. And I've said, it was like, That's exactly right. The dads who are most enthusiastic about what we're doing usually have kids who are a lot older and have kids out of the faith and have seen a lot of the crash and burn and said, gosh, I wish I had this back when my kids were younger. And so it's like, okay, great, we have this now, but we have this huge barrier to entry, is these dads are saying, well, they might say this sounds good, but then they don't act on it because they're like not in pain, and it's not immediately pleasurable. So there's no pain. They can't be influenced out of pain. They're not influenced out of pleasure yet, even though in time, when they start to spend this time with their kids and get into their parenting and make that be one of their action goals, they actually begin to enjoy their kids more. But it's like starting exercise. If you haven't been exercising for a while, it's hard to get into it. It's hard to get into the rhythm. It's painful at times. When you start to do it, you get this endorphin high where it's just like, this is good. So that's what we're up against, is like we're asking dads to do something that isn't immediately satisfying. Intellectually, it doesn't seem like they really need to do it. And it's only when they start to do it and do it consistently that they begin to realize the results. And they could be like me. Like I would say half the family, you were probably 10 or 12 years old when I started to clue into like, I need to be doing more of this now. And then as the older kids got older and I started to see the problems that were coming up, problems that we even, needed to get counseling for myself and for Maria, but also for the kids, and just realizing, wow, oh my gosh, this happened even further back. Like it's like this happened when they were really young.
Yeah, and to take it to a really practical level, this isn't something we actually discussed at length yesterday, is this idea that if you look at religion as its own thing, as its own separate entity, then you're really doing it a disservice, because religion is the glasses through which you look at the world. We're not just talking about dads don't take on the responsibility of teaching the faith until it's too late. Like that's part of it, but that's an incomplete part of it. It's almost like dads don't fully embrace the responsibility of being a father and everything that means for their kids. And that doesn't just mean being there during the tough times. It means being there all of the time. And I think that part of the reason why, at least for me, someone who's not a father, but who has 9 younger siblings, I've told you before, I struggle with the age gap between like 5 and 12. It's really easy to spend a ton of time with my younger siblings when they're under 5. Because they're super, super cute. You can basically say anything to them and they think it's the greatest thing ever. I used to sing songs to Vivian about how I was going to throw her in the lake and give her a spanking and all of this stuff, and just like, bust her chops all the time. And then she hit like 5 or 6 and I didn't know how to handle her anymore. She wasn't just a cute little kid anymore. She was like kind of like starting to think more and more like an older person, but not. And I just didn't know how to relate. And for a lot of my siblings between 5 and 12, I really didn't know what to talk to them about. I didn't know how to handle it. And then suddenly when they hit 12, 13, 14, well, now they're interested in guys or girls. They're doing high school stuff. They're thinking about what they want to do for college, what they want to do with their lives. And now we can have intellectual conversations again. But if I were a dad, I would be missing out on 7 of the most important years of my kids growing up. So I think that it's not just about passing on the faith. It's about building a relationship over the course of the entire 18 years you have with your kids. Mm-hmm. And it's never too early to start. In fact, you need to start as early as possible, and you need to continue for as long as possible.
Yes, and I would say that the real power here is what you're struggling with Vivian, who's 6 now and turning 7 here, and she keeps reminding us how many days until she's going to turn 7. That it comes back to the feedback loop. Is like, what kind of feedback are you getting from her? And how are you responding to that? And so when she's little, it's enjoyable to play with her because she responds. She'll get really excited and really sad, and you could drag her all different kinds of directions, and it's pleasing to you and it's fun, and they enjoy it too. When they're getting older, they're still looking for feedback, but it's not as it's not as enjoyable to be giving it to them because they don't respond in the same way, but they desperately need it. And so like, what is a good parent? A good parent is an excellent mirror, and an excellent mirror will show what is true, what is good, and also what is not. And so with our kids all during, for the full 18 years, and then they would continue in that like 6 to 12 range, is that I need to be focusing, and we as parents need to be focusing in on them and looking to see what is true, just looking to see and speak it, because like a mirror doesn't just take in an image and then give you darkness. A good mirror reflects back what's really there. And so as a parent, I need to be looking for not just the dark spaces to say, correct that, bring that into the light. Like, you did this wrong, which I did a lot of. I did a lot of negative corrective parenting. I also have to bring out the bright stuff, and the bright stuff needs to not just be things that society appreciates. Like, are you beautiful according to societal standards, and are you smart, and are you athletic? I mean, those are kind of the big three that society says, if you are those things, you're good. As parents, we know that if we bother to get married, so we're married, it's like we had to look far beyond the intellect and the looks of our spouse to be like, okay, what's this person's heart like? Can I trust them? And I remember, actually, this would be really helpful in parenting. I had this moment when I was married for probably 4 or 5 years, and I listened to a Focus on the Family radio cast, and Dr. James Dobson talked about the importance of making a list of what you want in a spouse. And so I was listening to him, and he's like, if you're a guy, you're going to put her at the top. She's beautiful. And I was like, yes. And he said, like, okay, now it's really important to do number 2. It's like, okay, she's smart. It's like, okay, great, keep going. And he said, make a list of 10 things. And so as I did, okay, beautiful, smart, funny. It's like, okay, there's the top 3. And then like it started to get real serious. Like, well, she needs to be loyal. Like, that's really important. She needs to be like compassionate, and I think that she needs to be truthful. And so I started listing these other things to fill out my 10. And then he said, now go back and rank them. And as I started to rank them, I was just like, well, what if I had like this beautiful wife, but she wasn't loyal? She would sleep around. I'd be like, oh, forget that. I'm putting loyalty on top of beauty, because I couldn't deal with that. And then what if she like was really beautiful, really funny, but she really wasn't compassionate? She really wasn't, she wouldn't really pay attention to you. I was like, okay, compassionate goes on top of beautiful and funny. And what started to happen is like my beautiful, funny, like all that stuff like started moving down the list to the bottom because all these other interior qualities were like so much more important. I was like, I'm not willing to trade out, beauty for loyalty, or a beauty for like a kindness. It's like, I want kindness before beauty. And not that beauty isn't good and something that's really attractive, but those interior qualities, I started to realize, wow, I wish I had this before I got married. Now, I feel like I scored because Maria had those things in spades. So I bring that back into parenting, is to make that connection of what are those qualities that I need to be reflecting back and seeing in my child, and then pointing those out to them. Like, you were just kind right there. And you were courageous, and courage is really important. And to redefine beauty to not just have it be physical, because it's important. It's important to try to, comb your hair and to look good for others. But there's only so much you can do with what you've got. And sure, you can exercise and stuff, but you've got, you're limited. And so, but these other qualities, there's a lot you can do with those. And our children need to be seeing that. And I feel like I had a huge advantage. I was a Boy Scout, and I had to memorize the Scout law. And this, a Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Well, all of those qualities are great qualities, as well as if you look at the theological virtues, wonderful gifts that are infused by God of faith, hope, and love. Is this a faithful person? Is this a hopeful, trusting person? Is this a loving, charitable person, and the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And so those things are worth memorizing because it'll help you in your parenting as you're looking for, like I feel like I was kind of retarded in how I looked at other people, because it was mainly through this lens of intellect, beauty, and athleticism. And I had to shift it to be like, those things. This great athletic wife, but she's mean. Like, forget the athleticism. Or she's not courageous. If somebody, she's not willing to stand up for my child, I'm like, I need you to stand up. I need your heart to be willing to, defend and protect. So given that, when it comes to our parenting, like, what do I do? And, for the full ages, what do I need to do? What do I need to focus in on is pointing out to our children those wonderful qualities early on. And if you need to memorize a list, memorize a list of virtues and start to compliment for those, because they're so much more important when your child decides to be like, I've seen my kids, they'll say, hey, Dad, can you put $10 into the collection? Here's $10. And they're tithing it, like they're generous. And that's one of the, the fruits of the Holy Spirit is that you'd be generous and goodness. And so the upshot of that is, if those messages are constantly being given to our children, they're almost like moorings out in the middle of a tumultuous, wavy water, where it's like, like there's a storm going on, and like, what do I hold on to? If I try to hold on to beauty, good luck, it's going to go. Athleticism, good, do that as much as you can, but it's not a permanent thing. Intellect, there's times where you're not going to do as well as you hope to do. Again, you do your best with that, but your efforts to be charitable, to be self-sacrificing, like I needed to compliment you. My older kids, I didn't do it nearly like I needed to when you guys were younger, so that you would see the real value, so that when I say that you're beautiful, beautiful has a whole different definition than just how cut your chin is and how big your muscles are. And I would say, from a parenting standpoint, I don't think I did that well.
I wanted to push back on this a little bit, because I definitely agree that pointing out the virtues in your kids, the things that they can choose to be, who they're becoming, is far more than physical beauty. And I think that I can still remember compliments you gave me on who I was choosing to become that I, didn't forget. And I mentioned one of them in one of the last episodes of the podcast. But on the other side, you've also told stories of how you, with one of my sisters, thought that she was physically very beautiful. And you felt like you shouldn't tell her that, because then she would get a big head. And you've come to regret that. Why?
Why? Because I chose not to tell her, because I was afraid she would get a big head. I didn't say it not only enough, I didn't say it at all. And then she was convinced that she was unattractive. And what was really difficult with that is that that convincing that she was unattractive is like a rut in the road that is hard to fill in. I mean, if you go out right now into the street and you find some area where where the pavement has a rut in it, try to fill it with water. That's not going to work. Try to put dirt in there. That's not going to work. You can even put in some more asphalt, and that'll eventually break out too. It's just like, this is the only thing you can do is like grind up the road and start over. Well, we can't do that in life. I mean, God can do that by His grace. And so with that, I just thought, gosh, and I've shifted gears with the younger kids. Poor older kids that we had to learn, and you had to be the guinea pigs. But to point out even the physical beauty, I was like, this is important, and you are beautiful. So it's an array of all of those things, those interior qualities, and also on the external, because every person, there are qualities in every person that are beautiful. And then so as a father trying to reflect my Father in heaven, He sees all the goodness and beauty too. And so it's like, I need to be more like Him and reflect that to my kids.
Yeah, and the definition of humility that I love is that humility is all that is true. I think that you talked about that list of 10 qualities you're looking for in a spouse. And loyalty is obviously more important than physical beauty, but physical beauty is also important. And if you have a child who has all of these virtues that they're practicing, but they're also created by God, and God doesn't make mistakes when He creates people, then it's also appropriate to compliment the physical beauty. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I remember distinctly, I was 10, probably 12. And I was in line to serve. I was in my cassock and surplice, and we were serving at this family camp, about to serve mass, and all of the kids were lined up in order of height. So everybody in front of me was pretty much younger. Everybody behind me was older. And there were a couple of teenagers behind me who had been at the teen program the night before. And the speaker had made the joke that he had 6 kids and that his wife was sexy. And they were laughing about how funny that was, because that's what teenagers think is funny. And me, being a conscientious, uptight, homeschooled kid, turned and I'm like, hey, we're about to go serve mass. You shouldn't be joking about that. And I remember the kid, and his name to this day, I won't repeat it, but he looked at me and he said, you know what? The thing is, John Andrew, you're probably never going to have a sexy wife. And I didn't reply to it because he said something that I believed to be true. He tapped into the fact that I did not believe I was attractive. And so the corollary of that was, if I don't believe I'm attractive, then that means I don't deserve to be with somebody who I find attractive. And I think that that was age 12. That wasn't something I figured out when I was a teenager. That was age 12. And I remember at age 10 feeling like I was 100 pounds at 10 years old. That must mean that I'm fat, so I'm not attractive. And looking back now, coming back to this idea of it's never too early to start, being the father you need to be to your kids. I don't recall ever. In fact, the only thing I can remember ever being told about my physical appearance was mom actually, like, in the carpet drawing out this graph, this like curve of attractiveness, and pointing to not the most attractive and saying this is where you are. It was probably like 70% or something. And my brain at 8 or 9 was like, oh, so I'm not attractive. That's what I took away from that. And that, again, at 10, at 12, compounded, and it got to the point where there have been things in the last year that I've dealt with that come from that underlying rut, and that's why it's so, so important to realize, like, these interactions that you have when a kid is 5, 6, 7, 8, they're creating the pathways upon which the rest of the life of that kid is going to be built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really agree. One of the things that has been said about people who have a life after death experience is that when they try to explain what it is like to be in the presence of Christ, so they died, came back, and they said, like, what was it like to be with God? And they struggle to say, well, what is this? But there's one word that they commonly say, is that they say, I felt cherished. So it's this gaze from God where, like, he sees the good in you and he loves you in a way that you feel it so much that the people said, I didn't want to come back. Like, I've not been cherished like that here on earth. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, like, I can remember times, for my dad and for my mom, when they looked at me and said, wow, Michael, like, you really did a good job. And I could tell that they really, really believed it. They weren't just paying lip service. And so knowing that, looking back now, I think, gosh, it's so important that it's almost easier to cherish this cute little infant, which is so important, so important, because those pathways start even in utero, where you're not even looking at them. Like, they hear, the children can hear and they can sense, is mom scared or is mom at peace? Does mom love? I mean, they can feel that early on, and then right when they're out. But that needs to continue, because that cherishing. So if there's one thing you can remember in this podcast is, like, and you have to pray to God, because there's a big challenge. Somebody could say, well, okay, you're just telling us go cherish. Like, I can't just go do that. And it's like, I totally understand. Because this starts with, you have to back it up. It's like, because if you don't feel cherished, it's hard to cherish. And Mother Teresa said this thing that if there is no love, insert love and you will find love. And so it's like, yes, we need to act in love. We need to cherish, But in order for us to be filled up, like we need to turn to God. And that's like my consistent morning prayer, which I didn't make this morning because I had a headache. And I was like, okay, Lord, I'll just give you a short aspiration, say, thank you for the day. But the consistency of my prayer, what happens in the midst of that is that when I am praying every morning, I really feel like God is answering me. And the way I feel like he's answering is he's giving, there'll be a specific scripture verse that comes up and it was like, I was just thinking of that thing. And then it happened to be the reading of the day. And in that moment, I really feel cherished, like I'm listened to, like he cared. So in a similar way, I need to draw from that morning cherishing that God is doing with me and showing me that like he loves me and that he is taking care of me. And, from that, turn around and give that to my children. And so it takes my will. I have to be intentionally looking for the good in them. So like we can do that. And even if you don't feel cherished, do it anyway. Cherish anyways. Like reach out and do this, because again, when these little kids are little, it's just like you are building a foundation that is so strong if they really feel cherished. And it's not the false mirror where you only show good qualities, like it's the good and the stuff that needs to change. And so it's like, as I'm showing that, and I just asking God, like at some point I asked him with regard to my wife, I was like, Lord, help me to love Maria the way that you do. Help me to see her the way that you do. And that's a powerful prayer. Well, I should have taken that as well to the kids and say, so I will say it now, Lord, help me to see each one of my children the way that you do and to really cherish them, because it ain't just about me. It's about the formation that's happening in their lives. So when dads, when they're saying like, oh, I'm doing good enough, it's just like, oh boy, beware. That's almost the killer when you think you're doing good enough. And not that you should be saying, oh, I'm screwing up all the time. It's just like, no, that you need to see that there's more to do. And this happened 2 days ago. I was walking through the family room and I just thought, when's the last time I bless my kids when they go to bed, but when's the last time I just did like a random hug? And so like I went to, the kids and I started, put my hand on this one's head and kind of do a fake tackle with the other one. And it was interesting because there was a split second where with my 13-year-old, like I kind of snuck up on her and wrapped her up. And she kind of turned and she just gave me this look and a little bit of a smile. And I could tell she just felt cherished right there. But like that I took the time to say, like, you're worth me putting my arms around you. Like, and I want to be with you. So again, I was getting out of my own head and saying, like, what can I do to really love them and love them again early on?
I think that there's a balance here between kids, human beings in general, but kids especially are really good at understanding your intentions. I think that if as I'm hearing this and I think, well, I don't know what I would say to cherish somebody, it's like, that's not important. The words are not important. What's important is, did I seek out something about this person, choose to open my eyes to something about this person that's worth cherishing? And if I'm doing that and then I'm doing my best to act upon it, the words don't matter. In that case, it sounds like it wasn't even words. It was just a physical action.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, to wrap up this podcast, that clearly my faith has really helped me do better in my parenting, because the ultimate goal in heaven is to be face to face with God. But the wording that we use is to behold the face of God. And there's something that in there that is ultimately satisfying to us, to be held by God. And then to know, okay, like if I hunger for this so much, so too do my kids. And it's easier for them to behold God when they have been beheld by the representative of God in their life, me and their mom. And so to behold our children is really just to look them in the eye, to pay attention, to look for the good, to look for what's true, and hold it. And that's what cherishing is about. It's about beholding another person, recognizing their existence, seeing them for who they are.
That's all we have time for today. If you like what you've heard on the podcast, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and encourage your friends and family to do the same. If you want to support the work of Strong Catholic Dad, you can become a monthly sponsor for as little as $5 a month. I quit my job back in 2018 to found Strong Catholic Dad, and as of right now, it's not enough to pay the bills. So anything that you can do is appreciated. Until next time, be strong in faith, strong in hope, and strong in love. God bless.